Previously on Hearthstone Theory, I was working on an episode about Hearthstone's discard mechanic. Then the Year of the Raven happened, so I abandoned that script like a rattlesnake abandons its kids. But now, with a vacancy in my episode schedule, I have returned to this script, ready to share it with the world. Though with my luck, Blizzard will come out of left field and announce the next expansion like tomorrow or something. Greetings and welcome to Hearthstone Theory, where we always make sure to pay our dues. And by pay dues, I mean complete a video that I announced publicly 3 months ago. At least I stay true to my word, even words that I doubt any of you remember me saying. Today I'll be looking at the class of Warlock, also known as everyone's favorite jerk. The wickedness of this class should be pretty apparent. Even Nemsy is, frankly, juxtaposition incarnate. But instead of looking at the artistic stylings of Blizzard, we will instead do what we always do and investigate the mechanics of Warlock and what makes this class tick. But most importantly, I'll be looking at Warlock's biggest failure, the discard mechanic. Since the game was first launched, Blizzard has associated Warlock with the ability to discard, and has tied several different cards to this effect. And I think I speak for everyone when I say that, generally speaking, this effect hasn't been the most successful. Cards that use discard are often shunted in favor of more mundane options, and despite a quest existing that encourages a discard lock to come into existence, such a deck has never, ever been applicable. If you think it ever was, you're either wrong or you're being a troll, in which case you're still wrong. While Zoolock did occasionally manage to make the discard mechanic work, it was never a core aspect of their game plan. So let's examine Warlock and its discard mechanic. Why does it exist? Why is it faltered? And can it be redone to be better at its job? Here's the short answers to these questions. Because it's good in theory, because it's bad in concept, and probably not, depends how creative Blizzard is. Anyways, let's begin. Every class has its own distinct flavor, some more so than others, but Warlocks have a sense of uniqueness when it comes to the choices and card design made for them. Unlike every other class in the game, Warlocks have the distinct ability to trade and exchange the resources that they possess in ways that other classes are unable to do. What do I mean by this? To start explaining, we need to look more thoroughly at the idea of what the resources of Hearthstone are. Look at this field of play for a quick example. What does this player have at their disposal? This may seem like a simple question, but it's important to look at all of the values. For example, this player has minions on the field, the ability to make those minions attack, the cards in their hand, the cards in their deck, the mana for their turn, and the health of their hero. The player uses their cards and their mana to change these values, or to change those values for their opponent. Most classes in the game make this exchange very simple. The player exchanges one card and the mana it requires to activate its special effect. The differences between the classes, or what we like to call class identity, is what these special effects actually are. Druid has access to choose one effects, Priest uses healing, Paladins have Murlocs for whatever reason, etc. However, one of the 9 classes is different and utterly unique in regards to its class identity: Warlock. Warlock differentiates itself from other classes in a remarkably simple way. It exchanges not just an amount of mana and a single card to achieve the effects of its minions and spells, but multiple resources across the entire field. Cards like Flame Imp and Pit Lord deal additional damage to their hero, while Felguard permanently destroys a mana crystal. Shadow Flame destroys friendly minions to activate a board wipe, and Void Terror does it simply to create a giant minion. Even the Warlock's hero power plays with this effect, using mana and health in exchange for additional cards. Now, this theme of exchanging different resources to play different cards is very fascinating, and some of Warlock's coolest cards and decks mastered these exchanges. The classic Handlock deck from older times, as well as our more modern Evenlock, perfectly manage these exchanges to create amazing effects, keeping their health low for Molten Giants and their hand size high for Mountain Giants. But while minion exchanges can be used to remarkable effect, mana crystal destruction has been considered acceptable, and health loss is now a staple for the class, discard effects have time and time again been rejected by Hearthstone players. Why is that? On the surface, the discard effect doesn't seem particularly special. Most effects cost 1 card and some mana to play, which the discard mechanic changes by costing an extra card. On the formulaic surface, where 1 card is worth 1 mana is worth 1/1 in stats, most discard cards have extra stats to compensate for their extra cost. For a quick case in point, Succubus is a minion that would be similar to playing a Bloodfen Raptor and a Wisp, in terms of the cards played and the mana spent. Given Warlock's ability to draw cards in exchange for health and mana, it wouldn't be unreasonable to assume that an effect to spend multiple cards would be beneficial to Warlocks, even praised. After all, Warlock can already exchange its health, its minions, and even its mana generation for extra value. Exchanging extra cards is simply another avenue to explore. Additionally, cards are easy enough for Warlocks to replace. Who cares if they're discarded so long as the cards that do the discarding are balanced? However, it's that balance that is the problem, since the basic assumption of one card is worth 1/1 in stats is an oversimplification of Hearthstone's design. While cards are often balanced in this regard, such as Wisp and Snowflipper Penguin, what's more important is maintaining the balance of mana spent and cards played, which most pro players refer to as your curve. A player doesn't fail because they run out of mana, they fail because they either run out of health or they run out of cards. Then run out of health. This makes the discard effect nearly useless in a mid-range style of deck. It makes it such that your cards are transformed into cheap, fast power, which works counter to the mid-range strategy of spending mana as efficiently as possible. You need more cards to be able to do that. Control decks have no fortune either, since a control deck strategy is to maximize the value of each of the deck's cards. Since a card's value varies depending on its circumstance, sometimes the discard effect can eliminate an invaluable card to the control deck's gameplay. It's hard to justify those extra stats on your 2-drop when you've discarded the Defile for it, or worse, a core combo piece. The amount that you gain from the discard is simply not worth the amount you expected to gain from the cards you're eliminating. This leaves the discard effect one final avenue of use: aggro decks. This is actually quite appealing. Aggro decks appreciate being able to cheat out copious stats as early as possible, and discard does precisely that. Additionally, draining all the cards in your hand, an effect that aggro decks are quite capable of accomplishing, renders the discard effect obsolete. Finally, if a player has a game-ending card that can eliminate their opponent, they don't really care how many cards they spend. Since the game is about to end, those cards officially have no value, so they might as well be used to fuel the destructive finishing force. Looking at this trend over the history of Hearthstone, the concept of discard being strong in aggro decks appears to hold true. Control-style cards such as Lakari Sacrifice, Cruel Dinomancer, Blood Queen Lanathel, and Lakari Fellhound have all seen poor levels of play, while Soulfire, Doomguard, Darkshire Librarian, Malkazar's Imp, and Silverware Golem have all been staples in aggressive decks in the past. This helps us more thoroughly understand how cards revolving around discard can be viewed as good or bad. It's the idea of getting powerful stats out as fast as possible that allows the discard effect to flourish. So, case closed. Discard is best in aggressive decks and is otherwise useless? Well, yes, but that isn't the whole story. One final detail is important in regards to the discard effect: how fun it is. Two core aspects of the game of Hearthstone that Blizzard need to keep balanced are the random effects of the game and the strategy that the cards have. The discard effect works counter to the latter process by using the former. It randomly discards a card from your hand, which may impact your strategy or may not. While a clever player can try to be wise about their hand size and the probability of discarding particular cards, your capstone cards will usually be the ones saved in hand over time, even in aggro decks. This increases the odds that one of these core cards will get eliminated. Having a discard effect eliminate one of these cards can effectively lose you the game, thanks to RNG effects rather than your opponent's strategies. This isn't fun. Random effects may be fun when you manage to snatch victory from the jaws of defeat, but it isn't fun when you instead have a small chance of losing. A card that reads, "Battle Cry, you have a 1 in 5 chance to lose this game," may be balanced, but it isn't enjoyable. Altogether, this paints the problem with discard. The effect is naturally more damaging to control in mid-range decks, and even in aggro decks, which I consider unfun anyways, they often lead to even more unfun moments of sudden rushed value, or a careful combination suddenly going awry. So what can be done for this effect? In the end, there are 3 solutions, the first being that it gets abandoned altogether. This doesn't seem to be an approach that Blizzard is likely to take, so let's look at the other possibilities. The second, make exceptionally powerful control cards that require discard. We already have one card like this, Deathwing, which shows that the key to this is to make the cards exceptional enough that you don't care about the other cards you're discarding. This would negate the negative aspects of discarding cards you felt like you needed, because the payoff would be grand enough that you wouldn't care. The key is that these cards would need to be challenging to play, and thus infeasible for an aggressive deck to run. Since aggro decks already have the synergy with discard mechanics, it's important to make sure that these cards cannot be used in such a genre to prevent overly powerful combinations. Cards that cost more than 7 mana, or that gain benefits based off the cards discarded, are examples of what would be feasible for slower decks, but not faster ones. Blizzard has dipped its toes into concepts like this, but have hesitated to commit fully to the idea, with one exception, of course. Such a model has its own list of pros and cons, but I believe it would be more beneficial than the current cards we see printed, assuming the resulting effect was adequately strong. For the third, final, and my favorite solution, change the effect to allow a choice for the discarded card. This would make discarding a card become a strategic decision, where a player needs to carefully choose which card they need the least in order to continue. This idea leaves exploits in regards to cards like Silverware Golem and Klutchmar Zathas, so an effect like this seems unlikely to occur unless it's tied to a legendary minion. But in the end, the concept would be beneficial to the intrigue and strategy of playing the Warlock class. All in all, the discard effect has been one of the weaker ones that Blizzard has added to the game, but not without good reason. Warlocks are a fascinating class, balancing out their health, their mana, and their cards in a way that no other class can. However, this ability to manipulate these values doesn't change the core issues with this particular effect. Discarding cards isn't fun, it oftentimes isn't worth it, it has only proven strong in aggressive circumstances, and it's all rooted in a random effect that makes the success of the deck more dependent on chance. I hope that someday Blizzard is able to show a new way to use the discard mechanic, one that supports clever strategy, technique, and promotes intelligent engagement. Until that day, remember that you are likely better off playing a different variant of Warlock.